to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Please call the roll.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee. Yes. Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Here.
And we're all here this evening. Moving on to public participation. We have a public comment period that's a 2-minute opportunity for any member of the public that's here this evening to address the board on any issue that you might like.
Good, nobody.
Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to recognition of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee members. And I'll step up to the podium. I know we have a few of them here with us this evening. So this is probably something that we should have done or could have done when we approved the comprehensive plan, but as you guys are all aware, we had a committee that we appointed that really did the bulk of the heavy lifting with reviewing our comprehensive plan as we went through the 9 months from zero to approve. So we invited the entire committee here this evening. I know some of them couldn't attend, but I'd like to recognize all of them individually and then take a group photo in the front. So the first one I know is here is our Director of Finance now, Justin Van Voren. I like when we give ourselves recognition. Stan Bond. Then we have Steve Youngerman. Here. I'm going to read these off in a second, though. And then we have Pat Kelsey.
Up here.
And then, what's that? Yeah, I will. I forgot about those momentarily. Ooh.
That's fine.
And then not with us this evening, we have Dan Conwent, Mara Johnson, Jeff Fusick, John Amon, and Mike Hammond. What's that? Were you on comprehensive plan? You can get a pen.
No, Pete.
Pete, stand up there with a folder.
Fake one.
Yeah, give him. And you must wear both.
Yeah. Yeah, put your pin on, Pat. Hey.
Just leave it here, nobody's coming back up.
Make a better impression next time.
All right. Move on to the consent agenda. I'll read them off and then entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the village board meeting of June 9th. The executive session minutes from June 9th. Accounts payable through June 19th of 2014. And the accounts receivable report for May of 2014. And I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
Moved in second. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to items for separate action. Resolution 2014-011, approving the use of MFT funds for the 2014 proposed street maintenance program and salt purchase. With that, I'll turn it over to Director Poopens for his summary.
Thank you, President Brawley. In your packet tonight is the IDOT resolution to use village MFT funds for our upcoming resurfacing program and salt purchases for 2014-15 winter season. You can see on the cover sheet, we list the streets that are going to be on the resurfacing program: Seasons Ridge Boulevard, Winter Hill Circle, Edgewater Court, High Point Court, Winter Hill Court, and then we have what we call village-wide patching. We'll work to locate areas in town. We're just going to do basic roadway patching. If you go to the last page of the packet, the title of that sheet is a municipal estimate of maintenance costs. That gives a breakdown of how the money is going to be used. Basically, $664,440 for actual roadway construction, $160,000 for primarily road salt, but we also have some calcium chloride and weather forecasting services within that. It takes us down to our operations cost of $824,440. Then you see our estimate of preliminary engineering, inspection, and material testing that goes along with the road program, which gives us a total of $909,280 in MFT funds. So for passage of the resolution will be approval to use that much in funding. Our budget for this year was $500,000. At a previous meeting, the board directed staff to use unobligated MFT balances, which will turn out to be $409,280. That unobligated means it's in our account, it's ready to be used. So we'll add that with this year's budget to come up with a total of $909,280. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff on this?
I have a quick question. How does this year's total MFT fund relate to last year's as far as amount? Are we getting more? Are we getting less? Or
And I don't know the exact amounts, maybe.
It is approximately the same, and it is slightly less than what we received in fiscal year 14.
okay.
One follow-up question on that. What is the remaining balance then, or roughly, approximately, of our MFT account then, after we?
Approximately zero in unobligated funds. This will use up all, I say approximately because we receive funds on a monthly basis. So since we first came up with this estimate a few months ago, we may have brought some funds in. I didn't get
Right.
together with Director Van Voren yet, but for our planning purposes, we are considering this to use up the remaining unobligated funds
Okay.
for now.
That's
Now,
what I
again,
figured
We'll
I'd-
continue to build up funds as the year goes on. Some of them will be spent on this and other projects.
That's what I figured. I just wanted it to be clear that we don't have like a big reserve in our account or something.
Right, that's actually, it's,
Yeah.
most people consider that a good thing. You don't want lots
Right.
of MFT funds
Yes.
sitting in your account. The idea is that you take those and get them on the street, which is what we're doing with this, so.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So passage of this tonight will allow us to send it to IDOT. That'll start once they approve it, then we'll start the bidding and contracting process. If we move forward, we think we'll be out there paving in August, when the actual work would start.
Excellent. If there are not any more questions, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee
Yes.
Lee? Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Moving on to item B this evening, which is the waiver of bid and award of contract for fuel pump replacement and fuel management system upgrades to B&K Equipment Company of Lansing, Illinois, in the amount not to exceed $28,000. And I'll ask Director Puvens for his report again.
Thank you, President Brawley. This is a budgeted item. There's $28,000 in the FY15 budget. This, if approved, this money will be used to replace the two fuel dispensing stations we have now. One is a diesel pump, one is a gasoline pump. The current models are 10-plus years old. They're old mechanical technology, which isn't in itself a bad thing, but finding replacement parts is becoming extremely difficult. So in addition to the 2 pumps, it'll also include the fuel management software and system that basically automatically records information each time a employee fuels up. They put in their mileage, their key is coded, so we know which vehicle it's going into, and then we can use that to do all kinds of data analysis with our fuel usage. One of the simplest things we use it for is billing, just to know some of other agencies use our pumps. So again, this would be a not to exceed. There is some shipping charges that we don't know the exact amount on yet, but the current estimate for the work is $25,320 plus shipping, which is generally a few $100s. So that's the reason for the not to exceed 28, but this would include all the equipment that we need and installation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from the board?
Is there any street value to the old ones that we have? Is there any value left in those at all, as far as if we were to sell those?
I'd have to look into that, trustee. We haven't really explored that.
Okay,
My guess is very little. There may be some scrap value.
okay.
We did, one of the pumps quit working the other day. We were able to rig up a repair, so,
We just won't put that in the Craigslist ad, and that it was
Right.
damaged.
right?
Now, with the scrap value, do we do that? Do we actively do that with items? Do we scrap them as opposed to letting them take these away?
Yeah, if there's value to them, we'll try to do that, right?
Even, I mean, all scrap has some value, right?
Fuel scrap may not, because it may be contaminated with fuel, so,
Okay.
again, I hadn't really considered that element to this project. I can certainly do that and see if there's something to be had, but I know, fuel, any type of petroleum equipment, special rules for handling and for disposal and et cetera. So it's not something I think we could just take to the scrap yard and they'd weigh it and pay us for. So,
I would move for approval of the proposal.
Second.
Moved in second, just one quick question before that, sorry. The 25,000, do we have, because this is a waiver of the bid, do we have an existing relationship with B&K? And if not, did we get a couple quotes for this work?
we took a single quote on this from B&K primarily because we do have an existing relationship with them. They've been our longtime fuel service provider. They don't provide fuel, but they've provided our pumps in the past. They do maintenance for us.
Okay.
They help us with our underground storage tank units. So based on the standing business relationship we have with them. And again, staff has reviewed this and feels it's a reasonable price, but we did
Yeah.
not go out for multiple bids on this.
Okay. And if there are no other comments, we'll call the roll on this?
Need a second?
Second.
Yeah, he's
Oh, I'm
second.
sorry, okay. Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurley?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Youngman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Out of sorts tonight.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to item C this evening, which is an option and lease agreement with New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, AT&T Mobility Corporation for construction of an antenna monopole at 1435 Wabansia Avenue, subject to attorney review. And again, I'll ask Director Pubens for a summary on this.
Thank you, President Brawley. As you can see on the cover sheet, staff has been working with representatives from AT&T for quite some time now on the idea of constructing a monopole tower for, generally for cell antenna use. We have been looking at 2 sites. This first item, we're going to talk about them separately tonight. The first agenda item is for 1435 Wabansia, which is our Well 8 site. We have an existing multi-leg water tank there that we have some antenna facilities on now. We don't feel that we can add much more additional antenna equipment on there just due to the structural load that it puts on the catwalk and some other elements of the tower. So the idea was that we would work with AT&T to construct the monopole. They would build it and fund it and then turn over the ownership of the pole to the village. And in that regard, we would use then take that as an opportunity to lease additional space on that, on the pole to other carriers. We know from history that the Well 8 site in particular is a desirable site, so there's no guarantee that they'll come running, but we feel pretty strongly that there are other carriers that would be interested in using this pole. In exchange for paying for it up front and building it, we would credit then AT&T a certain number of months of rent-free usage of the pole. Basically, we would take their cost to do that work, divided by the monthly rental rate of $2,900, plus any, I can't find the term, the 3% that we add to it each year. Thank you. And come up with a certain number of months, which we don't know the final construction cost at this time, but we anticipate it will be somewhere between 5 and 6 years that they would be on that tower receiving credit. So we would have one site occupied with AT&T. That would leave us with 4 other sites. We do have some current users out at the Well 8 site. We won't require them to move now, but certainly the next time we paint the water tower, it's likely that we would require them to move to the monopole, or we have the option of leaving them on the water tower if the site is that popular that we could lease out that many spaces. So staff feels this is a good arrangement for the village. Again, the site is somewhat of an industrial use anyway, so we don't feel the monopole is misplaced there, and we think that it's a good revenue opportunity for the village. Again, we're not putting out any money up front for this. We have had some staff time, et cetera, that we have had to put into doing the reviews and the engineering reviews, et cetera. But again, in the long term, we think this is potentially an excellent revenue opportunity. So in your packet tonight, I'm sorry, I kind of paused there. In your packet tonight is the proposed lease. Attorney Anderson primarily has worked with AT&T to put together the final language. I would like to say that the majority of the staff in front of you has worked on this at some point, finance, community development, engineering, and public works, to get us to this point. So staff has reviewed it thoroughly. Attorney Anderson, again, has worked with their AT&T's legal department to finalize the lease. We feel we have more than adequate protections as far as site access and what they can do and cannot do on the property. They feel that they have adequate freedom to manage their facilities as they see fit. And there's certainly other government agencies that have requirements and laws and restrictions on how they operate too. So I think I'll stop there and open the floor to any questions.
Thank you. We have questions from the board?
This is the same item, was this presented before the Plan Commission? We've seen this before.
It did go to Plan Commission,
Okay, maybe it was there when I was on Plan.
and then we have discussed it here at the board before. I don't recall the exact date. It's been some time. It may have been last fall. It's been a long time coming to get to this point.
Is there even the remote possibility this will affect any sort of police communications?
We don't believe so, and I believe there's language in the contract that says if it does, then we have the authority to stop the new user until they correct it. It's their responsibility to go on the site without interfering with other
Okay.
existing users.
Thank you.
I would like to add that this is all subject to attorney review. We wanted to put that in there. Just again, we're still finalizing the construction plans. We think the lease for this site is, what you're seeing is the final document, but we do have some construction issues to work out. So again, this would be subject to attorney review, basically, just so staff has the freedom to give it the final once-over to make sure everything's where we need it.
For the cellular companies that choose to take advantage of this, is there a reason to be hopeful that it might improve the service in our community too?
I would say yes, spacing that on the more towers and carriers, there are more towers and antennas you have, the better your coverage. I don't know, I think we have a bigger issue on the west side of town with coverage. But the next agenda item hopefully will address that. But again, I would say in general, yes. And I'm not a cellular technology expert. Somewhere between novice and expert. not expert.
Mike, how many people are on the tower now?
How many
many
carriers are on
carriers?
the water tank now? I think we have 2, plus some,
Plus AT&T now?
no, AT&T's not out there right now. Cricket is out there, and I apologize, trustee, I'm not sure, because we've got
What are they paying per month? Are they paying the 29, or is it?
paying less than this, probably closer to 2,200, I believe. So Director Van Voren did some comparables, like we tend to do on things, and found that that was quite a bit lower than some of the rates that other communities were receiving. This 2,900 is not the highest. We did ask for the highest, but did get some, it was very good faith negotiations. We think the 2,900 is a good place to be. We thought we landed in a good spot with that in comparison to other communities and what they're getting. There is an escalator clause, that's what the word I was searching for, of 3% per year, so.
Does this or has this need to go through our own process? Does this meet our zoning ordinance with the height of the monopole and distance from the property line, that kind of thing? Does it need to go before Plan Commission? Okay. Any other questions? Entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Bond.
Second.
Second. Second by trustee Youngerman. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Move on to our last item for separate action today, which is very similar. It's an option and lease agreement with the same company at 10 Civic Center Avenue. And I'll ask Director Pubens for a summary on this.
Thank you. The reason we broke this one off is that it's not, negotiations are not as far along as we've been able to reach on the Well 8 site, the Wabansia Avenue site. Our recommendation is to approve the lease agreement, subject to attorney review. It'll be very similar to the one you've just seen. AT&T and Attorney Anderson have talked this through. They're very comfortable with that language. There would be some items that would have to be changed just to suit the site, addresses, things like that. AT&T has shown some reluctance possibly to moving forward on this, I think because of the time aspect. So our goal is that by approving the lease tonight, it'll demonstrate to AT&T that we would like to have the same arrangement at the police department site. Attorney Anderson, anything to add to that?
Just to be as candid as possible, AT&T has a schedule on these towers, and their representatives have indicated that this one's on a cut list or a kill list if it doesn't get done by the end of June. We hope to have a little bit of an extension of time to do that, because the thing that's really holding us up is that there's a covenant on the police department property held by the Fox Valley Park District that prohibits any commercial use of the property. We've asked the Fox Valley Park District to release that, only for the towers, so, not that much. But we haven't gotten that yet. And so until we get it, we can't finalize the deal. So we thought one way to induce AT&T to continue to work on this is for them to have us on the record as we have approved it, but we've just got to clean up the title issue. So that's why we want to do this one along with the.
This is kind of vague, but it said located near the east parking lot. That's not close to the Paul Diamonds, is it?
This would be located at the east end of the existing police parking lot.
East end, okay.
So it'll be on the village's property. So you know where the fence enclosure is. It'll be just east of that in the grass area. So basically between the fence and Griffin extended, where Griffin starts to curve around.
Okay. Thank you.
You know how tall these poles are?
Not to exceed 199 feet. That will probably be the height of the final pole height at Wabansia. It may be a little shorter at the PD. It's one of the details we're working out. We had asked for a taller pole, and they had agreed. got some new data in that just may be more than is required, so we don't want to have 50 extra feet of monopole out there if we don't need it. So we're working with their engineers to try to determine what that optimum height is.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by trustee
Second.
Hines, second by trustee Spurling. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee
Yes.
Lee.
That carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to items for discussion this evening. Item A, which is the ICSC conference review, and I'll ask Director Young for his summary on this.
Last month, President Brawley, myself, and Administrator Zofel attended the Recon Conference. This is put on by the International Council of Shopping Centers. There's about over 30,000 participants, so it's a major event. We go because we like to try to maintain and establish relationships with retailers, developers, and also meet with large property owners, primarily on the commercial end, obviously, within the village of Montgomery that are attending the conference. We had a number of focus areas as we prepared for the conference this year, and we're able to set up a number of appointments, and we added some appointments when we were out there. So our focus was on trying to attract restaurants, hotels, grocery stores, and infill big box, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So we had established meetings ahead of time with Fazoli Restaurants, Dunkin' Brands, McDonald's, Denny's, Best Western, Spirit Halloween, which has been in the village as early as last fall, Save-A-Lot Foods, and Hibbert Sports. When we were out there, we were able to put together a couple other meetings with major commercial developers in the Chicagoland market, including Able and Associates, which was a very interesting meeting in terms of understanding the market in the Chicago suburbs. We had meetings set up with RCG, which is the property owner for the Kmart Center, McVickers, Next Realty, and Inland. And also, we're able to establish a couple other meetings with smaller commercial property owners within the village, including Milco, which has property along Orchard Road. Basically, what we heard is that the retail economy is improving, but they're very cautious about major expansions or new development. As I mentioned, our focus to some degree is on filling up big boxes, including Kmart and some of the other vacant properties. And that is a tricky situation because of the fact that most of the big box operators like Best Buy or others are looking for smaller type stores. So the old Kmart store is 86,000 square feet. So a Best Buy 5 or 10 years ago probably would have taken a serious look at that. But today their model is 30 to 40,000 square feet. So much smaller. They like to warehouse at a central regional location and then have a retail operation that's much smaller than the previous model. We also focused on grocery stores. We met with Save-A-Lot Foods. One of their criteria was actually, believe it or not, lower per capita income than what we have in the village of Montgomery. Our per capita income is about $63,000. They're looking at something more in the high 40s. So it's a learning curve. We talked to different groups. Best Western was very interested in our area, but they want us, frankly, to do a lot of the legwork. And that means finding major capital investors in the region that would like to get involved with a franchise situation like Best Western. So that's a short list, but coming up with that list is another challenge. So Fazoli Foods was kind of the same way. They have Italian restaurants in a number of other locations, but not so much in northeast Illinois. Dunkin' Brands, we know that there's a strong possibility of of a new site in the village, and they're working out the details on that. We had a meeting with McDonald's, and even though we do not have a McDonald's in the village, obviously we have a number of McDonald's surrounding the village. They would like to be at 30 and Orchard. Unfortunately, it's just a little bit too close to their restaurant that's down in Oswego on the west side of Orchard. And Denny's was very interested in the Applebee's property. So we're following up with them and think that that would be an excellent fit, obviously, once the construction's done on 30, proximity to the theater across the street in Oswego. And Spirit Hollywood, I keep saying Hollywood, Spirit Halloween was in town last year in the old Hollywood video. That's why I keep saying Hollywood. That space is no longer available because Pet Supply Plus is going to be, they're doing construction now, renovations to that building. So they're looking at the possibility of the old Ace Hardware on Douglas and Montgomery Road. So what we took away from the conference really was that in today's marketplace, and again, looking at redevelopment of, say, the Kmart Center, it takes both public and private capital investment. It's no longer a market situation where I don't feel that we can look to the developers to do all of the capital renovations that would be needed for the parking lot, access drives, what have you. So what we took away was that it's definitely something that it's a team approach between the municipality and the developer themselves. Again, I mentioned earlier that most of the groups looking to find franchisees for our area are looking for the municipality or the MEDC or somebody to do the work on who those major investors would be into a franchise situation. So we come up with that list. They need to understand the demographics of our area. We had two different packets with us, one for demographics centered on Orchard and 30. And what we do is we have a 1, a 3, and a 5-mile radius around that intersection that tells us about income, makeup of a household, travel distances, a number of different things. And we also had demographics that were just put together about a month and a half ago for Douglas and 30, because they're, obviously you all know, but it's two distinct marketplaces. So understanding both the demographics of our area, but understanding the influence of the surrounding communities, and specifically Oswego, and how they have an influence of who looks at Montgomery for retail opportunities, because there's all of the national chains, or I should say most of the national chains are along Route 34 in Oswego. We pick up some of that, obviously, with Sam's and Penny's and Menards at the intersection of 30 and 34, but we're greatly influenced, at least the Douglas Road corridor is greatly influenced by what happens in Oswego. To a lesser degree, the Orchard Road corridor is influenced by what happens to Yorkville, but it does have an effect of what's in Yorkville and what happens on Orchard, as well as Oswego along Orchard. Some of the major property owners, including McVickers and others, said that, and McVickers is the owner of most of the outlots at the Orchard Crossing Center where Walmart is. They continue to say that we need more rooftops. Now, that's kind of a debatable argument maybe, but they did bring that up, and they said that that's a key to what they are able to market their vacant property for. And then everybody wants to know what what I call the pipeline to finish situation is. And that basically means walking a project through the initial concept plans, through the Plan Commission, onto this body if it requires a special use or a text amendment or a zoning change. They want to know what that time frame is. Nobody can afford to obviously waste time, but they want to know what the project will take in terms of time and commitment. It's not just about the capital, it's about the time as well. So this is just one part of our overall economic development effort. Obviously, this is focused specifically on retail. We have a whole different program that, in the weekly notes, we talked about the industrial tour that we had last week, but this is just for retail. As you're probably all aware, there is a fall ICSC show that's in Chicago. It deals with mostly the Midwest. Some of the same retailers will be there. It's nowhere near as large as this national or international show, but it is a good place to make connections, so we'll be attending that in October. There's some other programs that are coming up in August from ICSC as well, half-day meetings with, again, local retailers or people that are looking to do retail in the Chicagoland market. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or ask Matt or Jeff if they have anything they want to add. It was 2 days of intense meetings at times, but I think it was worthwhile. And again, it's about building relationships. As you all know, or most of you know, it took a long time for Sam's to pull the trigger and come here, and that's through the efforts of previous boards and previous administrator and community development directors. So it does take time. You don't always see the fruits of your labor instantaneously, but if we were able to get, say, a Denny's and the Applebee's, I think that that would be worthwhile. I've talked to many of you about, you know, the potential of redevelopment of the Kmart Center. One of our meetings was interesting because we think that we may have found a Chicago developer that frankly we didn't know a lot about before the meeting that would be interested in that property. So that relationship is being established now. We hope that something comes of that. So be happy to answer any questions.
One quick thing to add is I hovered around the CVS booth for some time and ended up meeting with the guy there to talk. We have 3 Walgreens in town, and I said, how come we don't have a CVS? So I noticed for a lot of this stuff, you know, the numbers don't lie, the demographics, if it makes sense for them to come in this area, they're going to come, but it's the kind of some of the more or less intangible stuff where getting through the development process with, you know, in another world, I deal with some of these developments, and they want to know the exact day of all their meetings so that they can get their approval and start their 3-month construction, open up their building on this exact day. And if they can't make that happen, they won't do it. So that's where we have a lot of control on how fast we can get desirable developments through here. So if there are any questions of Rich on this?
Do you guys ever try to get some doctors and dentist office stuff in the village?
Yeah, that is another focus point, medical offices. Now, we did not have anybody at this show that deals with that type of setup in terms of medical, dental, but that is another arm of what we want to go after. I've talked to Rush Copley, for instance. They have urgent cares, obviously, that they do throughout the Chicagoland area. That's one of the relationships that we're working on and trying to interest them in, you know, establishing a facility here. So that's just one. There's other groups, other medical groups that dentists are a little bit tougher to get to, and there seems to be a lot of dentists around us. But from the urgent care standpoint, and then possibly medical labs, that's something else that we're trying to approach.
Keep working on it, Rich.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to item B for discussion this evening, which is the liquor license request from Home Pantry. And with that, I'll ask Chief Myers for a summary on this.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight, I'd like to introduce the owner of Home Pantry at Montgomery and Douglas, Norm Katome. He has submitted a letter. He has a unique situation occurring at this time, and he'd like to present his business plan to you tonight. So I'd like to introduce Norm.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, everybody. My name is Norm Katome. I've been living and doing business in Kane County for over 20 years. 4 years ago, I came to this town. We love it. With my kids, I have 3 boys. With my experience, with the help, the business, they were almost going out of business. I took over 7-Eleven lease. We started the business. We were happy. We got it to a point where, we started doing good. The three boys, they were going to school full-time. They went to college. They graduate. Two of them became engineers, one chemical engineer, one geophysics engineer. One of them is with me here. He's a petrochemical engineer. He lived in this town. He loves it. He bought a house. He's going to move in the end of this month. We have a situation with our landlord. His name is Chris Cabos. When we start, he was complaining that, the previous owner never paid the rent on time, and he never talked to him because of that situation. When we came, he got greedy. He saw us, our hard work. We have a number of employees, two of them, one 5 years, one 10 years with family. We tried to discuss a new lease, a new term with them, with him and his dad. He got greedy. He wants more and more, and we got to a point where he said, all I have to do is just take the sign down and put Chris's Liquor instead of Home Pantry Liquor. Anyway, now we got a situation or an opportunity, which is 2 blocks down the street, where we are at this location, an empty location. It used to be a Blockbuster. That will be perfect, for our business. And we talked to the landlord, and we agreed to a term, of course, subject to the liquor license approval. And matter of fact, I include or attached a copy of the lease. Anyway, my request from the village president, from the village board, if I can, I know, the situation, there is no liquor license available in this town. But I hear all the time, or at least twice, you guys get the pressure, or, somebody comes in and apply for license. So what I say, sooner or later, maybe another license will be issued. And if that's the case, if this has happened, that means, to me, it's, this town is small, far as, everybody knows. It's a small town. We cannot, that street within like less than a mile, maybe 3-4 license in there, liquor license. So what this is mean to us, if somebody comes in, it's going to be a pressure, and someone is going to force out. So my idea, if I can get to renew the lease where I can keep the old location as a convenience store, and the new one, it's much bigger. It's about twice as the size, where I can keep it a full liquor license, a full liquor store. If worse comes to worse, and let's say there is no way to get a license, at least I have about a year and a half left on the lease, with my current location. If I can get 2 licenses until my lease ends, because, I'm liable for the lease, I have to pay, I'm liable, I pay $3,700, which is twice what everybody else in the strip center pays. So that's my only request, if you guys can create a new license, that'd be great. I would love to continue doing business in this village. And I'm here, paying $12,000 to $15,000 just in sales tax a month, to the state of Illinois, plus the employees. So we're happy. We're trying to make it a long, establishment, long relationship. And that's my request. So this is it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Chief, you want to walk us through the options that we have?
Yes, tonight, we're looking for a direction that we continue this background investigation or move in another direction.
Okay. And then I was going to ask our attorney to summarize the process, basically, of giving one liquor license in exchange for one that might close in a year and a half.
Yeah, that's a good question. Your typical situation is where someone is coming in asking for a brand-new license, and then you have the absolute right to decide thumbs up or thumbs down on that. This is pretty unique, as the chief indicated at the beginning of his comments, where at first I thought the presentation was going that we were simply talking about a transfer of location, the same license just moving from point A to point B, which would seem to be relatively innocuous. But at the end now I heard that it's really kind of have 2 licenses for a while. I would express a little concern over that from a legal standpoint. We can't really contract with somebody for this. In other words, we can't write up an agreement that says, we'll give you 2 in exchange for in a year and a half, you'll drop 1. So to the extent that you issue a second one, it means there are 2 out there, and the only way that we can revoke them is based on, bad acts of the licensee. So I have a little concern over our ability, if we let a second one out, of the ability to kind of take it back at the end of the year and a half. I'm sure he means what he says and will do what he promises, but legally I have to look a little bit deeper than that. So that would be my only concern. It sounds like if it were a viable option for him to simply transfer the site, that would probably be easier to accomplish from the village's standpoint. I can answer any other questions if I didn't address it.
So what he's really looking for is a transitional license to
Well,
transition.
I mean, in his letter, he states that if he's able to work out a lease where he's at, he'd like to have both licenses.
So then you'd have 2 stores?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, if he actually wants 2 stores permanently, is that what we're saying? Then that's your typical situation. The existing store is just, it is what it is, and he's asking for an additional license.
Just a little bit of refresher for the board on this proposed location at, 15-something Douglas Road.
1550.
A few months ago, we had an individual in here who I believe is the lessor on here, so he must be the owner of the building. He came in here and made a very similar request, didn't he, for a liquor license at that location that this board chose not to act on. So just a little bit of history on that. I think we have, my personal opinion is that we have I don't want to say this incorrectly. I think we're pretty well set with liquor license, in my opinion, in that general area, with Walgreens and the Randall Liquors, are the 2 that come to mind, and then obviously your other store. To add another of the same use in this area, I think would be detrimental to some of our other property owners, but also kind of creates a whole vibe in that area, in my opinion, that it's not something that I want to, be known for, is liquor stores in that area.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm all for the transitional and transferring from one location to the other. I don't see an issue with that, but the potential of having 2 stores open, when we did just recently deny the other, because we're heavy with liquor licenses in that area, that's the part that concerns me. Transferring one from one location to the other doesn't worry me at all. It's the having 4 liquor stores now in a quarter-mile radius of each other.
I think history-wise, too, the previous owner of his store came in, and I don't remember what the story was, but as soon as we okayed it, he sold it to him, which we figured the way the guy talked, he was going to be here a long time, and it was within a month, and you bought the property, or you bought the lease, I should say. And at the same time, in years previous to that, we had liquor stores that wanted to go into the shopping center with the music store and Poor Boys and all that, and we turned that one down because there was just too many liquor stores. And then, like Matt said, we turned the one down next to you. So I think we're right. We always had the consensus there's too many liquor stores. I'm with Doug. I don't mind if you lose your lease that you move. That's not a problem with me. But at the same time, I think you could, like he said, he could call it Chris's Liquors, but we're not going to probably issue any more liquor up and down that street. And definitely not to the point where, my opinion, I don't want 2 there, and that's what you're really asking for is 2. So I think, yeah, if you want to move, like Doug said, I have no problem with that. But to have 2 in a year and a half is not going to work, I don't think. Right?
So at least I can do business at the current location until I fully, move to the new one. And again, my concern is a year and a half left on the lease. I'm stuck with it. I have to pay
just so we're clear, if we're talking about the transfer, you can take as much time you want to transfer, but you cannot sell liquor in 2 locations with 1 license. So the village can work with you about the exact timing, but there's going to have to be a day when you shut it down in one place and open it up in the other.
Yeah, you can't have both stores open at the same time. No overlap. You would close one and open the other.
Yeah, we don't need another one.
What did he say?
If he were to, say, 1 year from now, to open the new business, could he do that?
I don't think that the transfer, you're not hearing any objections to the transfer. So the village can work with you on timing of the transfer, yes.
Because the liquor license, if I'm not mistaken, the liquor license is his.
It is
It's not the
his.
property's.
It is not the property or the property owners. It is the corporation or however he holds it.
Well,
And as trustee Lee pointed out, you know, he can't just put a sign up that says Chris's Liquors, because he doesn't own the liquor license, you do. You have the liquor license, not the building, it's you. So he can't just open up a liquor store there without coming before the board and getting another liquor license.
And this board's been pretty steady on only so many in that area of town.
Trustee Hines?
we don't need another liquor store on that Douglas Road area. We got 3 places right in the road that's gonna be selling liquor. If he wants to move to the west side or someplace other, but not on Douglas Road.
I would say the consensus is definitely that we're not interested in increasing the liquor license at this time, so I wouldn't want to move forward with that. It seems, I don't want to say split, but if it is your intent to transfer, potentially we can, well, it seems like trustee Hines is the only one speaking out against that, but I'd like to see us discuss that part of it if you're going to go that route at another board meeting, just so that we've had time to wrap our heads around that. Because the transfer, yeah, the liquor license, you hold that, that's yours. To transfer that is a simple approval, I think that's even probably at the staff level, to approve the address, the address change. So we can discuss that further if you'd like. Okay. Mhm. Right. Just to kind of give you a little background in the process for us, the way that we've laid this out in the past is so that we're not picking winners and losers in this process. We're not saying that we think you're the only guy for the job. We've created a certain number of liquor licenses, and it's been this board's and past boards thought that that's sufficient enough for that area. And the board, there's a consensus that we don't want to increase the amount of liquor that's sold in that area as far as just different businesses. The other thing I wanted to say was that we have very little control over the actual liquor license, and correct me if I'm wrong, once it's given to you. If you were to sell your corporation to somebody else, like what happened when you purchased, you open right back up. So once it's given out, it's very hard for us to reel that back in. You could tell us that you're going to do something and then exchange later, but we can't enter into a contract with you for that. So really, there's risk for us associated with that, so I think at this point, if you're interested in moving on, contact the chief if you're going to transfer, and, be clear about the transfer requirements. But at this point, I think we're well set on that side with liquor licenses. Mhm.
I'm happy here, I just been 4 years here, I'm happy, so I'd like to stay here. That's my main option, to stay in this town. 4 years I have brought up, people that come in, they don't mind paying a little extra, but they come for the service.
Mhm.
Because they like us expanding it, where it is, stuff like that.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you for coming this evening, and the chief will discuss this with you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Moving on, or is there any new or unfinished business to come before the board today? I know trustee Sperling has a couple.
Yes, I have a couple of items. I wanted to just recognize the MEDC had coordinated the cleanup on Alcott Road prior to the industrial tour. We had employees from Performance Food, Ozinga, members of the MEDC, we had village employees, trustee Lee and myself. We were out there cleaning up all day, and we got it looking pretty good, so I was pretty proud of that. The next day, I drove down the road, and of course, there was garbage out there. I did want to thank our Public Works folks, because I notified Rich and said, there's a pallet out there, can we at least get the pallet grabbed? And they did, they got it. It was gone very quickly, so I appreciate that. The next item I wanted to talk about, we had one of our residents was honored today, Herschel Luckenbill. He was named the Veteran of the Month by the state, and I had the pleasure of attending that ceremony today. It was a very nice ceremony, very well attended. And he's done a tremendous amount of work for our veterans, and he really deserves it. So I just wanted to recognize that we had one of our residents receive an honor. My third item, I'm not really sure who this goes to, so I'm going to focus on Jeff.
Okay.
The Walgreens parking lot over on Orchard Road is horrible. We need to speak with the owner of that property. It needs to be fixed immediately. I don't know how somebody has not twisted an ankle, broken a leg, something. It is ripped up so bad. So can we please contact the owner and tell them it needs to be done? Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
No, I got it.
Trustee Hines?
Yeah, that Center Parkway, Rich, you're gonna have to get that bank to get back out there and do that. That thing's terrible. I know that's not your job, but you could pass it on. Pardon me? Then, you know where I'm talking about, Center Parkway, by the post office? That grass, they cut it and it's still about this high, and they don't weed whack the weeds?
It did come out a second time after,
They did, you can't, did you go back there and look?
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. They did come back.
But they didn't do a good job. And Mike, you know, the east ditch, Gary sent some guys out there to do it. All they did is the top of it. They didn't do nothing in the center of that ditch. You know, they did on the farmer's side, on the east side of the ditch. There's trees growing in there and everything. That's got to be freed up for that water to flow through there. I would appreciate that very much. Thank you. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Yes. Saturday, I wanted to thank Historical Preservation Society, our committee, for the historical walk. It was excellent. There was about 43 people there. It was informative, well thought through. I had some family in from out of town that went on the walk, and they were impressed. And it turns out that Gretchen, on the Historical Preservation, just built a one-room schoolhouse down in Florida and restored it. And it's one town over from my aunt and uncle's house. So they're going to go down there and see her project down there. But I wanted to thank everybody, the staff, everybody that worked hard to put that together. I know Debbie worked hard on it, and it went really well.
Very cool. Trustee Bond?
The Montgomery Beautification Committee is launching a new program. It's modeled after the Holiday Decorations Award, but for this, it's summer-oriented, and we're calling it the Summer Floral Display Award. So if you were an entrant, and if your floral display is worthy of recognition, you could wind up with a sign similar to this in your yard. I would encourage people to watch the village website for information about how to enter and what the deadlines are. But we're excited about being able to recognize summer flower plantings and landscaping in the community. It'll be based on plants that are actually in the ground and not in pots, and it'll be based on what can be seen from the curb, not in backyards, but what can be seen from the curbside.
Cool. Very cool. Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, future meetings, Village Board meeting of July 14th, Beautification and Plan Commission meetings also that week, and then the Committee of the Whole meeting of July 22nd that may be canceled, so stay tuned on that. We do not have executive session this evening, and at that point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
Moved and second by Trustee Marisak. Call the roll,
Trustee Hines?
please.
Trustee Hines?
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.